Some places are forbidden for a reason. Across our planet, a hidden network of locations exists where ancient legends of curses and guardians are enforced by modern governments with razor wire and armed patrols. By the end of this journey, you will understand the powerful forces that create these permanent no-go zones. What truths are sealed inside a mountain of seeds meant to outlast civilization? Why would a government officially ban entry to a fort because of a centuries-old curse? We will explore 35 of the world's most restricted sites, from venom-soaked islands to digital fortresses, revealing the startling alliance between old myths and new power. What does our need to declare a place forbidden say about us? That old warning on the map, "Here be dragons," was more than decoration. It was a declaration of a boundary, a line drawn by fear and respect. For as long as humans have gathered in communities, we have set aside places we dare not enter. These were not arbitrary choices. A sacred grove where spirits were said to dwell, a royal tomb sealed for eternity, a mountain peak reserved for the gods. These sites were protected by stories, by belief, by a powerful cultural taboo. To cross that line was to invite calamity, not just for the individual, but for the entire community. The taboo created a social wall far stronger than any physical barrier, teaching everyone what was off limits and why. This ancient instinct to forbid is woven deeply into our psychology. It is a mechanism for preservation, for maintaining order, and for managing the profound fear of the unknown. In our modern world, this instinct has not disappeared. It has simply found new partners. The sacred grove is now a highly contaminated nuclear testing ground. The royal tomb is a data vault holding state secrets. The spirit-inhabited mountain is a fragile ecosystem on the brink of collapse. The warning is no longer whispered in legend. It is printed on official signs and enforced by satellite surveillance. Yet the core human impulse remains identical: to draw a line around something deemed too powerful, too dangerous, or too precious for ordinary access. Cultural anthropologists observe that these prohibitions always serve a dual purpose. They protect the place from us, and just as importantly, they protect us from the place. A radioactive exclusion zone safeguards human health, while also preserving a bizarre, accidental wilderness. A forbidden archaeological site prevents looting, preserving knowledge for future study, while also shielding us from potentially unsettling historical truths. This dance between curiosity and prohibition is fundamental to our nature. We are drawn to the locked door, the roped-off corridor, the island marked on no public chart. The very act of declaring a place forbidden ignites our imagination. What is being hidden and why? What would we see or learn or risk if we stepped across that line? This magnetic pull, this thrill of the prohibited, is the thread that connects a medieval cartographer's dragon to a modern government's barbed wire fence. It is the pulse we will follow as we journey to the first of these 35 locations, where an ancient curse was so potent it received an official government stamp of recognition. Our first destination sits within a sovereign state smaller than many city parks. The Vatican secret archives hold a unique kind of power, the power of withheld knowledge. Behind its heavily guarded doors lies not a weapon or a toxic substance, but an estimated 53 miles of shelving, a literal labyrinth of parchment and paper stretching back over 1,000 years. The very name is a masterclass in mystique. While the Latin word secretum is better translated as private or personal, the term secret has fueled centuries of speculation. What could possibly require 53 miles of secrecy? The archives are not a public library, but the private administrative record of the Holy See, a collection so vast it includes papal correspondence with figures like Michelangelo, Henry VIII, and even a letter from a Mongolian Khan written on silk. Access is a privilege earned only by accredited scholars with a very specific research purpose, navigating a meticulous application process that can take months. This creates a fascinating modern dynamic. The gatekeepers here are not soldiers but archivists, protecting fragile vellum and ink from the damaging touch of light and time. Yet, in controlling who sees these primary sources, they also exercise a profound influence over historical narrative. Legends naturally flourish in this atmosphere of restriction. Whispers persist of suppressed gospels that tell a different story of early Christianity, of detailed astronomical observations interpreted as evidence of otherworldly visitors, or of financial records that could rewrite the history of medieval orders like the Knights Templar. Whether these documents exist is almost beside the point. The archive's potency lies in its possibility. It represents the ultimate forbidden fruit for historians and conspiracy theorists alike, a tangible place where ancient religious authority and modern bureaucratic control merge to protect a territory defined not by geography but by information. The line drawn here is clear, separating those deemed worthy of this knowledge from everyone else. It is a powerful reminder that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can encounter is not a curse, but a truth you are not permitted to know. But what happens when the forbidden site is not ancient at all? The Nevada desert holds a location where secrecy is not measured in centuries, but in decades, and its mythology is written not in parchment, but in the contrails of experimental aircraft. Area 51 is the archetype of the modern forbidden zone. Its very existence was a poorly kept secret for generations, a blank spot on the map surrounded by the vast emptiness of the Nellis Air Force Range. The government's official stance for years was a simple, powerful tool, neither confirm nor deny. This vacuum of information became the perfect breeding ground for legend. In the absence of facts, stories rushed in to fill the silence. The public fascination crystallized around two powerful narratives. The first was technological wonder, the testing of revolutionary aircraft like the U-2 and the stealth fighter, machines so advanced they were mistaken for visitors from another world. The second, and far more enduring narrative, was the possibility of contact. Whispers of recovered alien craft and non-human biological material created a folklore entirely of the 20th century, a new kind of sacred story for a technological age. The protection of this site is utterly contemporary. It is a fortress of information, guarded by a perimeter of sensors, patrols, and stark signs that communicate a chillingly clear message: proceed at your own peril. This is not the spiritual danger of a cursed tomb, but the immediate physical threat of state authority. The legends of Area 51 are unique because they were born in the age of photography and film, with blurry pictures and eyewitness accounts from pilots and engineers adding layers of tantalizing, if inconclusive, evidence. The site demonstrates how a modern government can create a forbidden place not through ancient decree, but through a deliberate strategy of ambiguity and overwhelming physical security. It proves that the human need for mystery simply adapts its focus, from gods in the mountains to visitors from the stars, with the forbidden zone serving as the anchor for all our speculation. The line here is not drawn by fear of a curse, but by the relentless pursuit of a tactical advantage, making the secrets inside potentially more valuable than any mythical artifact. The most effective guardian of a forbidden place is not a government decree, but a fundamental biological fear. Off the coast of Brazil lies a small, rocky island that has perfected this defense. Ilha do Queimada Grande, known universally as Snake Island, is a place where the ancient legend is written in venom. This isolated landmass, severed from the mainland by rising sea levels thousands of years ago, became an evolutionary pressure cooker. The snakes trapped there, a species now known as the golden lancehead viper, underwent a remarkable and terrifying adaptation. With no ground-level prey available, they learned to hunt birds. Their venom evolved to be exceptionally potent, a fast-acting toxin capable of causing serious harm, necessary to immobilize a bird before it could simply fly away. The result is a predator of breathtaking efficiency in a terrifyingly concentrated space. Estimates suggest there could be between 1 and 5 of these vipers for every single square meter of the island's surface. That statistic transforms the entire landscape. A fallen log, a patch of sun-warmed grass, the low branch of a tree, every potential foothold becomes a potential resting place for one of the world's deadliest serpents. This biological reality birthed the local legends that swirl around the island. One persistent tale speaks of a lighthouse keeper and his family who lived there decades ago. The story goes that one night, snakes entered their home through an open window. The tragedy that followed cemented the island's reputation as a place where humans simply do not belong. Whether this specific event is documented fact or folklore is almost secondary. The story serves the same purpose as an ancient curse, a narrative warning that resonates on a primal level. The Brazilian government's role here is one of stark, practical enforcement of this natural law. It is utterly illegal for any unauthorized person to set foot on Snake Island. This prohibition is not about hiding a secret, but about managing two undeniable truths. First, it is a matter of pure human safety. An untrained visitor would be in immediate, extreme danger. Second, and just as crucially, it is an act of preservation. The golden lancehead viper exists nowhere else on Earth. It is critically endangered, and even a well-meaning but clumsy human intrusion could disrupt its fragile ecosystem or introduce disease. So the modern government acts as the custodian for both us and them, drawing a legal and physical boundary around an ecological reality that was already forbidding. Snake Island presents a clear equation. The ancient force is the deep-seated, instinctive fear of a lethal creature. The modern force is the scientific understanding of biodiversity and conservation. Together, they create a forbidden zone that feels absolute, a rare instance where the myth and the mandate are in perfect, terrifying agreement. It asks us a profound question. Are we being protected from the island, or is the island being protected from us? While the terracotta warriors stand in silent, orderly ranks, the true prize of China's first emperor lies undisturbed beneath their feet. The burial mound of Qin Shi Huang is a monument to a single, all-consuming ambition, the human desire to conquer not just lands but time itself. This vast, grass-covered pyramid holds a central chamber that has been sealed for over 2,000 years, protected by one of history's most elaborate and enduring legends. Ancient scribes recorded that the emperor's tomb was a microcosm of his empire, complete with ceilings inlaid with pearls to mimic the stars and rivers and seas crafted from flowing, toxic mercury. These accounts were long considered fanciful mythology, the exaggerated lore surrounding a powerful ruler. Then modern science arrived with its tools. Geochemical surveys of the soil around the mound revealed a startling truth: mercury concentrations significantly higher than the surrounding area. The ancient warning of poisonous rivers was not a metaphor, it was a literal, deadly security system. This discovery transformed the site from a historical curiosity into a profound archaeological and ethical puzzle. The Chinese government's policy is one of deliberate, indefinite postponement. Excavation is strictly forbidden. Officials cite multiple, interlocking reasons, a blend of ancient respect and modern pragmatism. There is a deep cultural reverence for the resting places of ancestors, a desire not to disturb what was intended for eternity. But this is coupled with a stark practical reality. The technical challenges are immense. How do you safely excavate a structure that may be booby-trapped, that likely holds fragile, priceless artifacts that could disintegrate upon contact with modern air? and that sits atop a landscape potentially saturated with a deadly neurotoxin. The decision represents a fascinating shift in archaeological philosophy. It is an admission that sometimes the most respectful and responsible act is to leave the past buried, to acknowledge that our current tools are insufficient for the task. The tomb stands as a perfect symbol of the convergence we are tracing. The ancient force is the emperor's legendary quest for immortality, his attempt to build an eternal kingdom in the afterlife, guarded by mechanical traps and a clay army. The modern force is a combination of national cultural policy, cutting-edge preservation science, and a humble acknowledgement of our own limitations. This creates a uniquely potent forbidden zone. It is not hidden in a remote wilderness or a secure military base. It sits at the heart of one of the world's most visited heritage sites. Millions of tourists can stand before the terracotta army, but the central chamber, just a short distance away, remains as inaccessible as a distant planet. It forces us to consider a difficult question. Is the greatest discovery sometimes the one we choose not to make? The delicate breath of 17,000 years can be extinguished in a single human lifetime. Deep within the French countryside, the Lascaux caves present a different kind of prohibition, one born not from fear of what lies within, but from love for what we found there. In 1940, a group of teenagers and their dogs stumbled upon a hidden entrance, and what they revealed was nothing short of a time capsule from the dawn of human creativity. The walls were alive with a stunning bestiary of aurochs, horses, and stags, painted with mineral pigments in dynamic, flowing lines that felt astonishingly modern. This was not crude graffiti, it was a sophisticated gallery from a world lost to time, a direct connection to the minds of our most distant ancestors. The public response was immediate and overwhelming. People flocked to witness this miracle. For over 2 decades, the caves were open and the paintings became a shared treasure. But then, a silent crisis began. The very presence of visitors was destroying what they had come to see. Each person brought in microscopic spores. Their breath raised the humidity and carbon dioxide levels, and the artificial lights provided energy for alien life. Green patches of algae, later white outbreaks of fungus, began to spread across the ancient walls like a slow-moving sickness. The art that had survived ice ages was being consumed in decades by the consequences of its own discovery. The French government faced a heartbreaking but clear choice. In 1963, they performed an act of radical preservation. They sealed the original cave to the public forever. The door was closed not to hide a secret, but to save a masterpiece from the unavoidable side effects of human awe. This decision redefines what a forbidden zone can be. It is not a fortress keeping something dangerous in, but a sanctuary keeping something fragile safe. The modern solution to this ancient art is a testament to both our technological ingenuity and our evolving ethical responsibility. Lascaux IV is a perfect facsimile, a painstakingly crafted replica built using advanced scanning and manufacturing techniques. Visitors can now walk through the cool, dim passages, experience the scale and wonder of the paintings, and feel that profound connection, all without exhaling a single molecule onto the original pigment. This site teaches us that sometimes the highest form of respect is distance. The forbidden status of the real Lascaux is a protective barrier erected by time itself, enforced by modern science and cultural policy. It acknowledges a painful truth that our love can be lethal, and that the most precious things sometimes need to be preserved behind an invisible wall, experienced only through a carefully crafted mirror. It asks us, what are we willing to give up to ensure that a story told in ochre and charcoal continues to be told for another 17,000 years? A single venomous serpent can define an entire island, but what defines a place where nothing is allowed to grow? the concept of ecological security creates a new kind of forbidden law, one written not in the past but in a carefully managed future. To understand this, picture a companion to Snake Island, a smaller, rocky outcrop we might call Ilha do Queimada Pequena. This islet represents a hypothetical next layer, a zone of prohibition established not for what lives there now, but for what must never leave. Imagine this place not as a sanctuary, but as a sealed laboratory of the natural world. Its legend would be a modern scientific parable, a story of a green plague, a botanical event so contained and so potent that the entire island must be quarantined from the wider biosphere. Perhaps it is the last refuge of a hyper-aggressive, genetically unique fungal network, or the site of a contained experiment with a plant pathogen meant to study invasive species in absolute isolation. The danger is not immediate and striking like a viper's bite, but slow, insidious, and ecological. A single spore, a stray seed, or a clinging root fragment carried out on a researcher's boot could, in theory, trigger an unstoppable chain reaction in mainland ecosystems. The protection here mirrors the most stringent biosecurity protocols of a top-level virology lab. Access would require airlocks, decontamination showers, full body suits, and incineration of all materials upon exit. The perimeter might be monitored by drones scanning for any unauthorized approach, and the penalty for trespassing would be less about breaking a law and more about risking a biological tipping point. This conceptual location highlights a profound shift. The forbidden zone is no longer just about preserving a relic of the past or protecting people from a present danger. It is about managing a speculative future, about drawing a line around possibility itself. The ancient force in this scenario is the primal fear of contagion, of a blight that could consume the world. The modern force is the predictive model, the computer simulation that shows the cascading effects of a single breach. This creates a legend rooted not in what did happen, but in what could. It asks us to consider prohibition as a form of stewardship, where the greatest act of care is to declare a place utterly off limits, to sacrifice our curiosity for the stability of everything outside the line. The story of such a place is a quiet one, a tale of what we successfully prevented from ever becoming a story at all. The future of our species is secured by a mountain of seeds. Carved into the permafrost of a remote Arctic island, the Svalbard Global Seed Vault is a fortress built for a quiet, hopeful apocalypse. Its popular name, the Doomsday Vault, speaks to its mission, but its true purpose is not about endings, it is about resilience. This is a forbidden place with an open invitation, a sanctuary where the line is drawn not to keep people out, but to keep something profoundly precious in. The vault does not house gold or state secrets. It safeguards the biological foundation of civilization, the genetic blueprints for every crop that feeds humanity. Imagine a global insurance policy written not on paper, but in barley, rice, and wheat. The Norwegian government, in partnership with an international treaty, provides the deep freeze and the formidable location. The permafrost acts as a natural refrigerator, and the mountain's rock provides stability, ensuring the samples remain viable even if the power fails. The entrance is a stark, angular wedge of concrete and steel emerging from the snowy slope, a minimalist monument that feels both futuristic and ancient. Its design is intentionally imposing, not to intimidate, but to communicate permanence and solemn purpose. Access is not forbidden, but it is meticulously controlled. You cannot simply walk in. The seeds are deposited by gene banks from nations around the world, each box a tiny arc of national heritage and global security. The legend here is a modern one, a narrative of collective foresight. It is the story of a world that looked at the vulnerabilities of our centralized food systems, at the threats of conflict, climate change, or natural disaster, and decided to build a backup. This creates a unique kind of aura. The vault is secluded by necessity, remote by design, to maximize its chances of surviving whatever crisis might come. It represents a profound shift in what we choose to protect. This is not a tomb for a single emperor, but a living library for all of humanity. Its forbidden quality is gentle but absolute, a scientific and diplomatic boundary that protects the ultimate public good. It asks us a quiet, monumental question: what is more sacred than the means of our own survival, and what greater act of faith is there than to bury that hope in a mountain of ice, trusting that it will never be needed, but knowing it will always be there? The line between sacred space and sovereign territory can become one and the same. For over 1.4 billion people, the city of Mecca in Saudi Arabia exists not just as a location on a map, but as the spiritual center of the universe. Here, the concept of a forbidden zone is not a matter of secrecy or safety, but of profound religious covenant. Non-Muslims are strictly prohibited from entering the city's boundaries, a rule that intertwines ancient Islamic tradition with the full force of modern Saudi law. This prohibition transforms the entire city into a sanctuary known as the Haram, a place of peace and exclusive devotion reserved for believers. The roots of this boundary reach back to the earliest days of the faith, established by the Prophet Muhammad himself when he reclaimed the city. It is a space purified for the singular act of worship, with the focal point being the Kawah, the cubic structure towards which Muslims across the globe pray 5 times daily. The annual Hajj pilgrimage, one of the 5 pillars of Islam, draws millions of faithful from every corner of the planet to this very spot, fulfilling a religious duty. To preserve the sanctity and logistical flow of this immense event, the restriction is absolute. The modern enforcement of this ancient rule is seamless and unambiguous. Checkpoints on all roads leading into Mecca verify the identity and faith of every individual seeking entry. Legal penalties for violation are severe, underscoring the seriousness with which this spiritual geography is protected. This creates a fascinating dynamic where the forbidden status is not meant to provoke curiosity or hide a secret, but to define a clear, inviolable category of belonging. For those outside the faith, Mecca remains a silhouette, a city whose minarets and mountains can be seen in photographs and documentaries, but whose streets and sacred precincts are accessible only through the descriptions of pilgrims. It represents perhaps the purest example of a forbidden zone created entirely by collective belief and maintained by unwavering conviction. The power here does not emanate from a government hiding its weapons or scientists guarding a specimen, but from a community protecting the center of its spiritual world. This asks us to consider the ultimate source of a boundary's strength. Is it the patrols and the checkpoints, or is it the shared belief, held by billions, that some ground is too holy for any footstep except that of a devoted heart? The right to remain unknown may be the ultimate form of freedom. In the turquoise waters of the Bay of Bengal, North Sentinel Island stands as a stark, living monument to that principle. This small landmass, ringed by coral reefs, is home to the Sentinelese people, who are among the last communities on the planet to have no sustained contact with the outside world. For thousands of years, they have maintained their isolation, actively and often fiercely rejecting any approach from beyond their shores. Their response to outsiders is not a mystery. It is a clear and consistent message delivered through action. Their legend is not a story told about them by others. It is the story they are writing for themselves, one of deliberate and unwavering separation. The Indian government, which holds sovereignty over the Andaman Islands, has made a profound and modern ethical decision. It has chosen to enforce the Sentinelese's own ancient boundary. A strict exclusion zone extends for several nautical miles around the island, and it is illegal for anyone, including journalists, researchers, or tourists, to attempt to make contact. This legal protection serves 2 critical, interwoven purposes. First, it is a matter of basic survival. The Sentinels have lived in genetic isolation for so long that common illnesses like influenza or measles, which our bodies routinely manage, could be catastrophic for them, potentially wiping out the entire community. Second, and just as importantly, it is a recognition of their autonomy and their right to self-determination. The state, with all its power, acts not as a conqueror or an administrator, but as a guardian of their chosen way of life, enforcing a perimeter that the tribe itself has always maintained. This creates a forbidden zone unlike any other. The danger is not a curse or a toxin, but the very act of contact itself. The island is off limits not to hide a secret, but to honor a choice. It forces us to confront a challenging idea in an interconnected world, that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, and that the most respectful thing we can do is to turn our gaze away, to let the forest keep its secrets, and to acknowledge that progress does not have a single, universal definition. North Sentinel Island is a line drawn not just on a map, but in the human story, a reminder that before all our technology and exploration, there is a more fundamental right, the right to be left alone. The breath of the earth itself can be a sacred and lethal force. In the ancient city of Hierapolis, built atop the geothermal springs of Phrygia, the natural world presented a phenomenon that seemed to blur the line between the mortal realm and the divine. A fissure in the rock, known as the Plutonian, emitted an invisible, odorless vapor, carbon dioxide, heavier than air, that pooled in the enclosed space before the cave's entrance. To any creature that wandered into this low-lying mist, the effect was swift and silent. Small animals and birds would stumble, lose consciousness, and pass away, appearing to simply drop dead before the gate to the underworld. The ancient priests of Pluto, god of the riches beneath the earth, understood this deadly mechanics on an observational level. They would demonstrate their divine favor by leading bulls into the grotto, holding their own breath high above the gas and emerging unscathed as the animal succumbed. To the witnessing crowds, this was not geology. It was a miracle, a tangible manifestation of supernatural power. The site was therefore both deeply sacred and profoundly dangerous, its taboo enforced by the very atmosphere. Today, the ruins of Hierapolis are an open archaeological park. Visitors can walk among the stone travertine terraces and see the remains of the Plutonian's temple structure. But the ancient hazard has not vanished. The earth still exhales its deadly breath. This presents a fascinating conceptual question. What if a modern government, armed with precise sensors that can measure the exact concentration of that carbon dioxide plume, decided to act? Not with a simple warning sign, but with a permanent physical seal over the cave mouth itself. The official rationale could be a masterful fusion of ancient narrative and modern public safety protocol. A press release might literally cite the 2,000-year-old legends of the deadly breath of Pluto as the original, culturally documented risk assessment, now validated by contemporary science. The restriction would not be about hiding a secret, but about formalizing a danger that has always existed, transforming an ancient spiritual boundary into a modern administrative one. The priests are gone, replaced by environmental health agencies. The miracle is explained, but the prohibition remains, updated for an era of liability and universal access. This theoretical action shows how the core reason for a forbidden zone can remain constant across millennia, even as the language of enforcement evolves from sacred right to safety regulation. It asks us, when does a legend stop being a story and start being a scientific fact? And who gets to draw the new line around the old, deadly truth? The most sacred space in Japan is not built to last, but to be perpetually reborn. The Eye's Grand Shrine exists in a state of eternal becoming, a living architecture that defies our modern obsession with permanence. Every 2 decades, in a meticulous ceremony known as Shikainen Sengu, the entire complex is carefully dismantled. The old wood is respectfully distributed to other shrines across the nation, and on an adjacent, identical plot of land, a perfect replica is constructed from fresh, fragrant cypress. This cycle has repeated with brief interruptions for over 1,300 years. The ritual is not about restoration, but about renewal, a physical manifestation of the Shinto belief in the constant cycle of death and rebirth found in nature. The shrine is not a monument to the past, it is a dialogue with the present, an act of faith performed with saws and chisels. Yet within this ever-changing complex lies a chamber of absolute stillness. The inner sanctum, the Goshoden, is believed to house Yota no Kagami, the sacred mirror, one of the 3 imperial regalia of Japan. According to legend, this mirror was used to coax the sun goddess Amaterasu out of a cave, returning light to the world. It is not an artifact to be displayed, but a divine presence to be sheltered. Access to this innermost space is a prohibition woven into the very fabric of the tradition. Only the emperor himself and a handful of the highest-ranking priests may ever enter. For the millions of pilgrims and visitors who journey to Ise each year, the experience is one of profound distance. They approach through vast, gravel-covered courtyards, pass through towering wooden gates called torii, and finally glimpse the thatched roofs of the central structures from behind multiple wooden fences. They cannot see the mirror, they cannot enter the buildings, they cannot even walk on the sacred ground. They come to feel the presence, not to behold the object. This creates a forbidden zone of unparalleled spiritual potency. The barrier is physical, yes, but its power is entirely symbolic. It draws a line between the secular and the sacred, the human and the divine, the seen and the unseen. The ancient force is the myth of Amaterasu and the imperial lineage that descends from her. The modern force is the unbroken will of a culture to preserve that mystery through unwavering ritual. The shrine's seclusion is not meant to exclude but to elevate. It teaches that some truths are not grasped by sight, but by respect, that the most important things are often those we agree not to possess, but simply to acknowledge. In a world where everything is photographed and shared, the Ise Grand Shrine remains a silent, powerful testament to the beauty of the unseen, a sacred heart that beats behind a fence, renewed with each generation, forever just out of reach. A curse can become law when the government posts the sign. In the arid landscape of Rajasthan, the sprawling ruins of Bhangarh Fort stand under a dual shadow, one cast by crumbling walls and another by a 400-year-old story. The legend speaks of a local holy man, an ascetic who lived in quiet devotion, and a princess whose towering palace cast its literal shadow over his simple home. The tale says he foresaw the town's doom and pronounced a curse that no roof would ever again rise as high, and that any who tried to live within the walls would meet a grim fate. Whether this event happened as told is less important than what it created, a powerful cultural memory that the place is touched by misfortune. This folklore alone would make Bhangarh a magnet for ghost hunters and the curious. But the story takes its modern turn with the arrival of an official government agency, the Archaeological Survey of India. At the fort's entrance, they have placed signs that carry the weight of the state, explicitly forbidding entry to the premises after sunset. This is not a suggestion, it is a rule enforced by guards. In doing so, the authorities have performed a fascinating act of cultural alchemy. They have taken a centuries-old supernatural narrative and codified it into contemporary policy. The practical reasons are clear and logical. The fort is a vast, unstable archaeological site. At night, with no lighting, the risk of a tourist falling from a broken staircase or a wall collapsing is very real. Preventing vandalism and protecting both the ruins and the people is a straightforward conservation goal. Yet, by invoking the curse in the public imagination, the government leverages a far more potent deterrent than any fine could ever be. It taps directly into a deep-seated, shared belief. the ban after dark feels less like a bureaucratic regulation and more like a respectful acknowledgement of an older truth. This creates a unique rhythm for the Forbidden Zone. By day, Bhangarh is open, bustling with visitors exploring its gates and temples, its legend just a spicy story told in the sunlight. But as the sun dips below the Aravalli Hills, the atmosphere shifts. The guards usher everyone out, the gates are secured, and the fort is returned to the domain of its own story. The daytime belongs to history, the night belongs to the legend, and the government acts as the timekeeper for both. This site shows us how a modern state can become a steward of myth, using an ancient warning to enforce a very modern need for safety and preservation, allowing the curse to do the work of the guardrail. The soil itself became the enemy. In the quiet, rolling countryside of northeastern France, a different kind of forbidden zone took root, not from ancient decree, but from the cataclysm of modern industrial war. The Zone Rouge, or Red Zone, is a scar upon the earth, a permanent exclusion area born from the unimaginable violence of the First World War. Across hundreds of square miles, the land was so pulverized by artillery, so saturated with chemical agents like mustard gas and phosgene, and so littered with an estimated millions of unexploded shells that the French government made a solemn, staggering declaration. These places were to be written off, deemed forever uninhabitable and unfit for cultivation. Signs were posted with a stark, two-word warning, peril de mort, peril of death. This is not a spiritual taboo, but a physical one, a boundary drawn by the lingering presence of industrial death. The ancient force here is a modern legend, the myth of the lost generation and the enduring trauma of trench warfare, a story of landscapes so broken they could never be fully mended. The zone is a forbidden memorial, but one enforced not by sentiment, but by the very real, ticking hazard beneath the wildflowers and young trees. Farmers still unearth rusted shells when they plow fields at the zone's edges, and specialized teams, known as dayminers, risk their lives daily to clear the remaining ordnance, a task estimated to take centuries more to complete. This creates a landscape of eerie duality. Where once there was mud, blood, and barbed wire, nature has slowly returned, creating forests and meadows that are paradoxically both beautiful and deadly. The Zone Rouge asks us a difficult question about legacy. How do we manage a place that is both a mass grave and an ecological accident, a memorial and a minefield? The government's prohibition is an act of permanent caution, a line that says some wounds inflicted upon the earth are too deep to heal with a simple passage of time. It stands as a sobering testament to a new kind of forbidden law, one written not in curses, but in cordite and chlorine, a warning from our own recent past about the permanent price of total war. A single closed gate can hold back an entire story, tucked within the bustling grounds of Tokyo's Sano Inari Shrine. Amidst the vibrant red torii gates and the quiet hum of the city, one wooden gateway stands permanently shut. Its latch is never lifted, its panels never parted. The local legend surrounding it is simple and absolute: this gate must never be opened. To do so, the story warns, would invite catastrophe upon the city itself. The nature of that disaster is left hauntingly vague. A flood, an earthquake, a great fire. The details are less important than the enduring command, keep it closed. This is not a grand national myth, but a hyper-local piece of folklore, a whispered agreement passed down through generations of neighborhood residents and shrine caretakers. The power of this prohibition lies entirely in collective consent, a community choosing to honor a story to maintain a boundary whose original purpose may be lost to time. Now consider the modern custodians of such a place, the city's Cultural Heritage Board or the shrine's administrative body. Faced with a decaying wooden gate that requires preservation, they have a choice. They could simply repair it and leave it closed, a quiet nod to tradition. But imagine a more profound integration. The authorities could formally acknowledge the legend within the site's official conservation plan. The documents might state, the integrity of the closed gate is essential to the intangible cultural heritage of the shrine. Its permanent closure is a key feature to be maintained. This is not an act of superstition, but of deep cultural respect. The gate transforms from a mere architectural element into a protected narrative artifact. The modern force here is not belief in the curse, but a belief in the value of the story itself. By enforcing the ancient prohibition, contemporary managers become guardians of a local identity, preserving a unique thread in the fabric of the city's history. This small, specific act illustrates a powerful principle that sometimes the most effective way to protect a culture is to protect its mysteries, to agree that some doors, for reasons both practical and poetic, are meant to remain forever shut. It asks us what we choose to carry forward, not just the monuments but the whispers that give them meaning. The most effective forbidden zones are often those we never think to question. Far out in the heart of the Indian Ocean, the crescent-shaped atoll of Diego Garcia exists in a state of permanent, purposeful isolation. On modern maps, it is a blank space, a strategic pivot point for global military power. Public access is not restricted, it is impossible. This is a fortress built on coral, where the modern mandate of national security creates an absolute, unquestioned boundary. The atoll hosts one of the most pivotal American military installations outside the United States, a logistics hub and bomber base with a runway long enough to handle any aircraft in the fleet. Its value is purely geographical, a stationary aircraft carrier positioned for influence across continents. The protection is total, enforced by the combined authority of the United States and the United Kingdom, which administers the territory. The ancient legend here, however, is not one of spirits or curses, but a much more recent and human story of displacement. In the 1960s and 70s, to clear the island for the base, the British government arranged for the entire indigenous Chagosian population to be relocated. Families who had lived on the atoll for generations were taken to Mauritius and the Seychelles, their homeland closed behind them. This event created a powerful, painful modern narrative of a people separated from their roots. The forbidden status of Diego Garcia is therefore layered. On one level, it is a straightforward matter of contemporary geopolitics, a zone of such tactical importance that its seclusion is non-negotiable. On another, deeper level, the prohibition sustains a rupture in human history, preventing the return of a community to its ancestral home. The base's ongoing operation depends on its isolation, making the geopolitical present permanently override historical continuity. This site asks us to consider the cost of a strategic boundary. It is a forbidden zone born not from mystery, but from a clear, calculated decision where the stories that are silenced are not ancient, but within living memory. The line drawn here is defended by warships and treaties, proving that sometimes the most powerful forbidden places are those created to serve the relentless priorities of the present, leaving the stories of the past to echo across the water from a distant shore. A door stands waiting in the stone, but it has no handle. High in the Peruvian Andes, the Huang site holds an enigma carved directly into a sheer rock face, a recessed rectangle with a smaller alcove at its base that looks unmistakably like a gateway. The local name for it is profound, the Puerta de Huang, or the Gate of the Gods. This is not a door built to swing on hinges, but one etched by geological chance and human imagination into the mountainside. The legends that cling to it are not warnings of curses, but invitations to a different kind of mystery. One enduring story speaks of an Inca priest named Aramumuru, who, fleeing the Spanish conquest, arrived at the site with a sacred golden disc known as the Key of the Gods. He is said to have placed the disc into the small depression in the rock, causing the great door to glow and open, allowing him to step through into another realm, never to be seen again. Other tales suggest this was a portal used by heroes and shamans to travel to the land of the gods, a place one entered but did not return from. The power here is not one of prohibition, but of transcendence. The site is not surrounded by fences or patrolled by guards. The Peruvian government has not declared it off limits, yet a powerful, unspoken boundary exists. Its isolation is the first guardian, a remote location requiring a dedicated journey. More significantly, its sacred status to the local Aymara people creates a de facto barrier of deep respect. For them, this is not a tourist attraction or a puzzle to be solved. It is a part of a living spiritual landscape, a place where the veil between worlds is thin. This creates a fascinating dynamic. A visitor could physically walk right up to the stone door, touch its cool surface, and stand in its frame. But to do so without understanding its context, without the reverence it commands from those who hold it sacred, is to cross a different kind of line. The prohibition is not legal but cultural. It is enforced by tradition, by the weight of shared stories, and by a simple, powerful understanding that some mysteries are not meant for intrusion, only for contemplation. The Gate of the Gods challenges our very definition of a forbidden zone. It asks us what truly seals a place. Is it the padlock and the posted regulation, or is it the collective decision of a community to treat a space with such profound honor that offense becomes unnecessary? The door remains closed, not because it is locked, but because we have agreed, through a whisper of legends passed down generations, that its purpose is to mark a threshold, not to be a passage. The invisible predator does not growl or lunge, it simply exists. On April 26, 1986, a single, catastrophic failure at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant unleashed a new kind of ancient terror into the world, one written in isotopes and half-lives. The core of reactor number 4 exploded, vomiting a plume of radioactive particles high into the atmosphere, a silent, scentless storm that would rewrite the geography of northern Ukraine. The Soviet government's response was to draw a line with unprecedented scale and finality, creating the Chernobyl Exclusion Zone, a 1,000 square mile territory from which over 100,000 people were permanently evacuated. This was not a spiritual banishment but a scientific quarantine of staggering proportions. The legend born here is uniquely modern, a chilling folklore of human fallibility. It is the story of a flawed test, of ignored safety protocols, of brave firefighters who walked unknowingly into a gamma-ray blizzard, and of a quiet, pervasive enemy that could not be seen, smelled, or felt until it was far too late. In the years that followed, this raw history was woven with darker threads of speculation, tales of ghost towns haunted by the echoes of abandoned lives, and myths of mutant creatures stalking the new forest. These stories, whether factual or fantastical, serve the same purpose as any ancient curse. They personify an incomprehensible danger, giving a narrative shape to the formless threat of cesium-137 and strontium-90. Today, the zone exists under a complex, layered prohibition. While controlled tours now navigate the crumbling avenues of Pripyat, the purpose-built city for the plant workers, this access is a carefully managed illusion. Visitors are escorted along strict pathways, their time limited, their movements tracked by dosimeters that click softly, measuring the accumulation of an invisible weight. The true heart of the Forbidden Zone remains sealed. The sarcophagus that entombs the shattered reactor and the newer confinement structure that now encases it are monuments of containment, engineered to hold the sleeping dragon for at least another century. Military checkpoints and radiation monitors stand as the secular priests of this new religion of safety, their authority absolute. The zone's enduring power is its duality. It is a frozen snapshot of Soviet life, a time capsule of 1980s modernity being slowly digested by birch and pine. Yet, it is also a vibrant, accidental experiment in rewilding, where lynx, wolves, and Piażułowski's horses roam free from human interference. This paradox asks us a profound question about legacy. Is this a monument to our failure, or an unintended sanctuary born from our absence? The government's decree created a boundary to contain a physical threat, but in doing so, it also created a space where nature, in its relentless resilience, began to write a new story over the old one. The line around Chernobyl is the clearest possible declaration that some mistakes are so vast, their consequences so enduring, that the only responsible act is to step back, to seal the door, and to let time, measured in millennia, begin its slow work of forgetting. The very summit of the Great Pyramid of Giza is a place of silence and wind, a view reserved for the sky alone, while millions of visitors each year walk its base and explore its known interior passages. The pyramid's highest point, along with its most fragile and unstable internal shafts, remains strictly off-limits. This creates a fascinating paradox. One of the world's most scrutinized monuments still holds spaces that are, for all practical purposes, forbidden. The legends here are some of the most enduring in human history, whispers of hidden chambers that hold the true burial goods of Pharaoh Khufu, or perhaps even the lost knowledge of a sophisticated, ancient engineering culture. The so-called Curse of the Pharaohs, popularized after the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb, adds a layer of supernatural warning to the physical site, suggesting that disturbing these ancient resting places invites misfortune. The modern Egyptian authorities, however, are guided by a more tangible set of responsibilities. Their restrictions are a careful balance of preservation and safety. The limestone capstone, or what remains of it, is incredibly fragile. The internal network of relieving chambers and narrow, sloping shafts above the king's chamber, known as the Grand Gallery, are subject to immense structural pressures and are not built for constant human traffic. Allowing unrestricted access would accelerate erosion, risk collapse, and pose a direct danger to anyone attempting to climb. So, they use a combination of physical barriers, sophisticated monitoring equipment, and the presence of vigilant guards to enforce these boundaries. This modern management transforms the ancient legends into a kind of practical mythology. The hidden chamber is not just a tantalizing mystery. It becomes a necessary hypothesis that justifies limiting exploration to non-invasive technologies like muon radiography. The curse is reinterpreted as the very real physical consequence of ignoring structural integrity. In sealing these spaces, the authorities are not merely hiding secrets, they are performing an act of profound respect for the monument's longevity. They acknowledge that the greatest wonder of the pyramid may be its survival, and that some questions are better left unanswered if the price of an answer is the damage of the artifact itself. This site perfectly illustrates how a forbidden zone can exist within plain sight, a locked door inside the world's most famous hallway. It proves that mystery is not always about remoteness, but about restraint, about the collective decision to stop, to not climb the last few feet, and to let the summit belong to the pharaoh and the passage of time. Some forbidden places are created not by history, but by geology and the relentless fury of the open ocean. Heard Island rises from the southern Indian Ocean as a raw, elemental force, a landmass of ice and fire where glaciers cascade down the slopes of an active volcano named Mawson Peak. This is a territory without ancient human stories, a place so remote and battered by the roaring 40s winds that it never sustained an indigenous population. Its legends are written in storm force gales and volcanic steam, a natural narrative of exclusion long before any government took notice. For centuries, it was a speck on the map known only to sealers and the occasional desperate mariner, its forbidding reputation earned entirely by the environment itself. The modern protector of this wilderness is the Australian Antarctic Division. They administer the island with a clear, scientific purpose, transforming its natural hostility into a legal and logistical boundary. Access is not just difficult, it is a tightly controlled privilege. Any expedition, whether for research or documentary filming, requires a permit obtained through a rigorous process, and all participants must adhere to strict biosecurity measures to ensure not a single foreign seed or microbe is introduced. This creates a forbidden zone of a new kind, one established not to protect us from a curse or a secret, but to protect a place from us. The entire island is treated as a pristine natural laboratory, a baseline for understanding climate change and isolated ecosystems. Every penguin colony, every patch of unique vegetation, every glacial stream is considered data in a planetary experiment. The prohibition here is clinical and forward-looking. It is about preserving a control group for Earth itself. This demonstrates a profound evolution in the concept of the forbidden. When a government declares a volcano at the end of the world off limits, it is not invoking a ghost story, it is enacting a principle of planetary stewardship. The line drawn around Heard Island is a covenant with the future, a promise that some corners of the world will remain as they are, not for our fear but for our understanding. The underground city is a myth that became a rumor, and the rumor hardened into accepted fact. Beneath the bustling stations and crowded trains of Moscow's famous metro lies another story, a whispered parallel network known only as Metro 2. According to persistent post-Soviet lore, this secret system was constructed at staggering depths during the height of the Cold War, a clandestine web of tunnels connecting fortified government bunkers, military command centers, and even facilities for the nation's leadership. It is described as an entire subterranean world, a hidden artery for the state's vital functions, shielded from public view and, theoretically, from any surface-level catastrophe. The Russian government's official stance has been a consistent and powerful silence, neither confirming nor denying its existence. This strategic ambiguity is the perfect fertilizer for legend. In the absence of a definitive no, every strange ventilation shaft, every heavily guarded service door, and every account from a retired engineer becomes a piece of corroborating evidence. The concept taps into a deep-seated fascination with the idea of a complete, functional world operating just out of sight, a literal underworld built not for the public, but for the preservation of power itself. If real, Metro 2 would represent the ultimate forbidden infrastructure. Its protection would be multi-layered, beginning with the formidable state secrecy laws that have historically governed such projects, and extending to physical security measures far beyond those of the public transit system, likely involving dedicated military units, biometric access, and layers of deception. This legend-turned potential reality demonstrates a crucial evolution in the nature of forbidden zones. The boundary is no longer horizontal, marking a place you cannot enter on a map. It is vertical, defining a depth you cannot descend to, a stratum of the earth declared off limits. It creates a forbidden space not beside us, but literally beneath our feet, separated by hundreds of feet of rock and reinforced concrete. The enduring speculation around Metro 2, lasting for decades beyond the Cold War that supposedly spawned it, reveals something fundamental. When a government builds its secrets deep underground, it is doing more than hiding facilities. It is embedding mystery into the very geology, ensuring that long after political eras change, the stories and the forbidden zone they describe remain alive in the public imagination. The river you must not cross at night flows through both myth and memory. In Japanese Buddhist tradition, the Sanzu River is not found on any map, yet its course is deeply known. It is the spiritual boundary a soul must navigate after passing, a place of judgment where one's deeds in life determine the crossing, whether by bridge, ford, or treacherous depths. This powerful allegory of transition has, over centuries, sometimes flowed from the realm of story into the physical world. In certain regions of Japan, a real, fast-moving river with a history of accidents and loss became culturally intertwined with this myth. Local folklore began to whisper that the dangerous waters after dark were not just a natural hazard, but a place where the worlds blurred, where the mythical river and the earthly one became one. The practical truth was stark enough. The currents were unpredictable, the rocks slippery, and drownings had occurred. But the ancient story provided a deeper, more resonant layer of warning. A modern municipal government, tasked with preventing further tragedy, faced a choice. They could post standard safety signs which might be ignored. Or they could engage with the cultural narrative already in place, by officially declaring the riverbanks a prohibited area after sunset, and by subtly acknowledging the local law in their public communications. They perform a fascinating act of synthesis. The regulation cites the measurable risks of injury, but it is amplified by the enduring power of the Sanzu myth. The forbidden zone created here is not about secrecy, but about layered meaning. The ancient force is the spiritual concept of a sacred, perilous threshold. The modern force is the civic duty to protect citizens from harm. Together, they create a boundary that is both legally enforceable and culturally understood. This transforms a simple safety measure into a kind of communal agreement, a recognition that some places, by both natural law and ancient story, belong to the night and its mysteries. It asks us how a legend can become a guardian, and how the most effective warnings sometimes speak not just to our logic, but to the stories we already carry within us. The red earth of Central Australia holds secrets whispered not by ancestors, but by orbiting satellites. The Pine Gap Joint Defence Facility is a sprawling technological complex operated jointly by the United States and Australian governments, a pivotal node in a global network of signals intelligence. Its dozens of white radomes, resembling giant golf balls scattered across the desert, are not passive listeners, but active participants in a silent, electronic conversation spanning continents. The work conducted inside is so sensitive that its exact nature remains one of the most closely guarded secrets of both nations, protected by layers of security that transform the remote outback into a fortress of data. This creates a forbidden zone defined entirely by the present tense priorities of geopolitics and information warfare. No ancient curse marks this ground, only the stark reality of a no-fly zone and the vigilant patrols that ensure its isolation. The modern legend born here is one of pure espionage, a folklore woven from the observed comings and goings of unmarked aircraft, the strange employment ads for cleared personnel, and the persistent questions about what exactly is being monitored or directed from this spot. For decades, peace activists and concerned citizens have gathered at its perimeter fences, their protests adding a human counterpoint to the hum of machinery, a living testament to the unease such opaque power can generate. Yet beneath this contemporary narrative of global surveillance lies a much older story. The land itself is part of the traditional country of the errant people. For them, this desert landscape is woven with spiritual significance, a living tapestry of songlines and sacred sites that tell the story of creation. The facility's presence and the profound secrecy that surrounds it creates a deep cultural dissonance, a contest between two very different understandings of what makes a place important. One view sees strategic value in remoteness and clear skies for intercepting signals. The other sees a connected part of a cultural and ecological whole. This layering makes Pine Gap a profound case study. The ancient force is the enduring Aboriginal connection to country, a spiritual geography that long predates national borders. The modern force is the imperatives of a military alliance, protecting technology so advanced its full capabilities are a state secret. The fence around Pine Gap does more than keep people out. It demarcates a collision of worlds where the oldest continuous culture on Earth meets the cutting edge of global intelligence. It asks us what is truly being secured inside such a perimeter, and what stories, both ancient and unfolding, are silenced by the choice to declare a vast stretch of desert off-limits. The most sacred name is the one we can never know. Within the heart of many nations lies a memorial that holds a profound and deliberate mystery, the tomb of the unknown soldier. While the public plaza above is a place of pilgrimage where visitors lay wreaths and stand in silent reflection, the true heart of the site rests below in a burial vault that is sealed for eternity. This inner chamber is the ultimate forbidden room, a space where access is not just restricted, but rendered conceptually impossible. The legend enshrined here is not of a single king or conqueror, but of collective sacrifice and anonymous honor. It represents every individual who left for conflict and never returned, whose story ended without a name or a known resting place. By choosing one representative to stand for all, the nation creates a powerful symbol of shared loss and universal respect. The modern protection of this vault is a solemn fusion of ritual and authority. A permanent military guard, often performing a meticulous, silent vigil, embodies the state's commitment to this perpetual watch. The changing of the guard ceremony is not merely a tourist attraction, it is a repeated vow, a physical performance of the promise that this one identity, this amalgam of countless unknowns, will never be left unattended. The decision to seal the inner vault forever is a fascinating act of symbolic preservation. If the chamber were accessible, if experts could one day enter with modern tools to perhaps extract a name from the remains, the entire purpose of the monument would unravel. Its power lies in its permanent anonymity. The prohibition is therefore an act of profound reverence, a collective agreement that some doors must remain shut not to hide a truth, but to protect a meaning. It creates a sacred, inviolable core at the very center of public life, a quiet space where questions are not meant to be answered, only honored. This teaches us that a forbidden zone can be an anchor for national memory, a deliberate emptiness that holds more weight than any filled museum ever could. It asks us what we choose to leave forever unknown, and why that act of withholding can be the highest form of remembrance. The deepest point of the Grand Canyon holds a village that has turned geography into a guardian. Supai, home to the Havasupai tribe, rests in a side canyon so profound it is accessible only by an 8-mile hike, a helicopter flight, or a journey by mule train down a winding trail. This is not a place you stumble upon. It is a destination you must intentionally seek, and your arrival is not a right, but a privilege granted by the people who have lived there for centuries. The tribe governs all entry through a strict permit system, a sovereign exercise of authority recognized and upheld by United States law. This creates a unique category of space, a permitted but profoundly restricted zone where the ancient force is not a curse, but a living culture, and the modern force is the legal framework of tribal sovereignty. The legends here are the Havasupai's own creation stories, narratives woven directly into the red sandstone walls and the turquoise waters of Havasu Creek. These waterfalls and pools are not just scenic wonders to them, they are sacred landmarks in their ancestral history. By controlling access, the tribe does more than manage tourism. They protect the integrity of this living landscape and the quiet rhythm of community life from being overwhelmed by the outside world. This model of stewardship presents a powerful alternative to the government-enforced exclusion zone. The boundary is maintained not by distant bureaucrats or military patrols, but by the community itself, blending traditional values with contemporary administrative tools. A limited number of permits ensures the fragile desert ecosystem is not trampled, and the revenue generated directly supports the tribe, funding infrastructure, education, and conservation efforts. It is a system of profound reciprocity. You are welcomed as a guest, but only under terms that ensure your presence does not damage the very things you came to experience. Supai teaches us that a forbidden zone can be defined by invitation rather than expulsion. The line drawn here is one of respectful relationship, a demonstration that true preservation often comes from empowering those whose stories are rooted in the land to be its primary guardians. It asks us to reconsider what access means and whether the greatest honor we can pay a place is sometimes to accept that our visit is a temporary gift, not an inherent entitlement. The most exclusive library in the world has no address. It exists as a list of names, a network of trust, a door that opens only for the chosen few. This is the model of Club 33, the legendary members' only enclave hidden within the public joy of Disneyland. Its magic lies not in its location, but in its invisible gate, an entry governed by invitation, wealth, and social vetting. Now, transpose this principle onto a different kind of treasure, not entertainment, but esoteric knowledge. Picture a private historical society, housed in an unassuming brownstone in a quiet corner of a great city. Within its climate-controlled vaults lies a collection that would make any scholar's heart race: original alchemical treatises, grimoires bound in peculiar leather, and correspondence between figures who studied the margins of the known world. This archive does not appear on any public register. You cannot find its hours online or walk in with a researcher's card. Access is a privilege extended solely by invitation, after a meticulous vetting process by a board of trustees who guard their holdings with the solemnity of temple priests. The ancient force here is the whispered legend of the collection itself, particularly one infamous volume rumored to carry a provenance of misfortune, a so-called cursed text that allegedly brought hardship to each of its previous owners. This story, whether factual or fabricated, serves as the perfect mythic guardian, deterring the merely curious and attracting only those with a serious, perhaps obsessive, intent. The modern government enforcing this boundary is not a nation-state, but the private institution's own strict governance, its bylaws and non-disclosure agreements that carry the weight of law within its walls. This transforms the concept of a forbidden zone entirely. The barrier is no longer a fence in a desert or a guard at a cave mouth. It is social, intellectual, and financial. The space is forbidden not by geography, but by membership. You are excluded not because you cannot find the place, but because you are not on the list. This model protects knowledge through curated exclusivity, creating a sanctuary where fragile manuscripts are safe from both the damaging light of day and the distorting lens of popular scrutiny. It asks a subtle but powerful question: who gets to be the keeper of a story, and when does protecting a secret become an act of intellectual sovereignty, a declaration that some mysteries are not for the crowd but for the coven? The ghost town is not a ruin of antiquity but a fossil of modern life. Along the sun-drenched coast of Cyprus, the resort district of Varosha presents a chillingly different kind of forbidden zone. This was not a place built to be sacred or secret. It was designed for pleasure, a glamorous Mediterranean playground of high-rise hotels, bustling cafes, and crowded beaches known as the French Riviera of Cyprus. In the summer of 1974, that world vanished overnight. Following the military action that divided the island, the Turkish army advanced to this very shoreline and drew a line not in the sand, but in concrete and chain link. They fenced off the entire district, sealing it from the world, and it has remained that way for 50 years. The prohibition is absolute, enforced by military patrols and signs warning against photography or entry. This is not a conservation effort or a safety measure. It is the physical manifestation of a political stalemate, a geopolitical reality made starkly visible. The ancient legend here is a modern one, a story of sudden, silent collapse. It is the folklore of interrupted lives, of meals left on tables, of cars still parked in showrooms, of a vibrant city instantly transformed into a tableau. Over the decades, stories have naturally emerged from this vacuum. Whispers of ghosts in the empty hotel lobbies, of the echoes of laughter from a beach that no one walks. These tales are not about curses, but about profound absence, a haunting created not by the supernatural, but by the abrupt halt of human presence. Nature has begun its slow, relentless reclamation. Trees sprout from cracked swimming pools, vines snake up the sides of crumbling balconies, and the once manicured streets are now fractured by roots and weather. To look through the fence is to witness a powerful paradox, a snapshot of 1970s modernity being gently dismantled by time, all under the watchful guard of contemporary soldiers. Varosha forces us to confront a difficult truth. A forbidden zone can be created in an instant, not by ancient decree, but by the sudden shift of political power. The buildings themselves become the artifacts, and their off-limits status is a permanent reminder of a conflict unresolved. It asks us what happens when a place is not forbidden for what it contains, but for the story of its abandonment, a story so politically charged that the only safe option is to seal the door and let the dust settle for half a century, turning a neighborhood into a monument to pause itself. The blueprint for life itself can become a classified document. We have moved beyond physical vaults and guarded islands into a realm where the forbidden substance is not gold or uranium, but genetic code. Imagine a facility that does not officially exist, a black site not for interrogations but for sequencing. Its purpose is to archive the most sensitive biological data on the planet, the complete genomes of creatures lost to time, or perhaps the proprietary formulas for synthetic organisms engineered in a laboratory. This is a conceptual 27th location, a genetic archive black site. Its ancient legend is not one of ghosts or gods, but a science fiction narrative born in our own century, a whispered tale of a designer pathogen, a genetically resurrected predator, or a microbial agent with a specific, unsettling purpose. The fear here is not of a curse, but of a chain of nucleotides escaping into the wild, a biological secret with the potential to rewrite ecosystems or challenge our very definitions of life. The protection of such a place would be a masterpiece of modern obscurity. Its location would be a state or corporate secret of the highest order, possibly buried within a larger, innocuous complex or hidden in plain sight. Security would be a layered paradox defending a digital treasure with physical might. Armed guards might patrol the perimeter, but the true fortress would be digital, an air-gapped network, relentless cybersecurity, and perhaps even active disinformation campaigns to mislead anyone asking the wrong questions. The mythology that grows around such a hypothetical site is uniquely potent because it feels inevitable. In an age of genetic editing and extinction projects, the idea that someone, somewhere, is guarding the ultimate biological toolkit seems less like fantasy and more like a logical, if unsettling, next step. This pushes the concept of the forbidden zone into a new dimension. The forbidden thing is no longer a place you can visit or an artifact you can see. It is information with the terrifying potential to become physical reality. The line drawn is not around a geography, but around a data set, a string of AS, TS, CS, and GES considered too dangerous for the public domain. The archive's power comes from its perfect secrecy, a silence that forces us to wonder what recipes for life we have already written, and which ones we have wisely or fearfully decided to lock away forever. The request was a quiet one, spoken for generations. Uluru is not a mountain to be conquered, it is a story to be heard. This massive sandstone heart in the center of Australia holds the Tijukurpa, the foundational law and creation stories of the Anangu people. Every crack, every waterhole, every curve in the rock is a chapter in an epic narrative of ancestral beings who formed the world. For the Anangu, climbing Uluru was not an adventure, it was a profound act of disrespect, like walking across the pages of a sacred text in muddy boots. They asked, they explained, they urged visitors for decades to appreciate its beauty from the base, to understand that this was a living cultural landscape, not a geological gymnasium. The climb remained open, a symbol of a divide between two ways of seeing the same rock. Then, in October 2019, something remarkable happened. The Australian government, in partnership with the traditional owners, made the climb permanently illegal. The chains that had been installed decades earlier as a handhold up the steep slope were removed. The ancient request had finally become modern law. This transformation represents a seismic shift in the concept of a forbidden zone. Here, the prohibition was not imposed from above for security or secrecy, but requested from within for reverence and respect. The government's role was not to create a new boundary, but to finally recognize and enforce an ancient one that had always existed in the hearts and stories of the Anangu. The climb's closure is a landmark act of cultural reconciliation, a formal acknowledgement that some forms of curiosity must yield to deeper forms of understanding. It acknowledges that the spiritual danger of desecration is as real as any physical peril. Today, the monolith stands complete. Visitors still come in their thousands, but they walk respectfully along the base, learning the stories of the Kunia python or the mala hare from Anangu guides. The silence from the summit is now a respectful one. This site teaches a powerful lesson about the source of a boundary's legitimacy. A forbidden zone gains its true power not from the force used to defend it, but from the collective agreement about its meaning. At Uluru, the law did not create a sacred space, it finally caught up with one, proving that the most enduring protections begin not with a command, but with a request whispered into the wind for generations, waiting for the world to listen. The air itself can become a weapon of slow corrosion. At the summit of Indonesia's Ijen volcano, a seemingly beautiful turquoise lake shimmers under the moonlight. This is no alpine pool, but a cauldron of nearly pure sulfuric acid with a pH approaching 0, a liquid so corrosive it can dissolve metal and flesh with terrifying ease. The crater is a theater of elemental extremes, where miners perform a daily dance with one of the planet's most hostile environments. Their work is to extract solid sulfur from the volcanic vents, hacking away at glowing yellow deposits that condense from the toxic gases billowing from the earth. They wear minimal protection, often just rags over their mouths, as they haul heavy baskets of raw sulfur up the steep crater walls in darkness, their path lit by the eerie blue flames of ignited sulfuric gas, a phenomenon that makes the night seem enchanted and deadly in the same breath. To the unprepared, this place is a certain death trap. The acidic fumes scorch lungs and eyes, the ground is unstable, and a misstep near the lake's edge could mean a fatal burn. It is a forbidden zone not by official public closure, but by the sheer, uncompromising brutality of its natural laws. The ancient legends here are not of ghosts, but of spirits believed to guard the volcanic fires, a personification of the mountain's raw, indifferent power. These stories served as the original warnings, teaching communities to approach with reverence and extreme caution. Today, the Indonesian government enforces a modern, pragmatic version of that taboo through stringent regulation. Access to the mining area is tightly controlled. Tourists are allowed only to a viewing platform at a safe distance, and only with guides and gas masks. The miners themselves are licensed specialists, their work governed by safety protocols that, while often stretched by economic necessity, formally acknowledge the lethal stakes. This site represents a raw convergence of ancient and modern forces. The ancient element is the primal fear of the Earth's destructive breath, the capricious fire mountain. The modern element is the hazardous industry built upon that very danger, extracting a valuable resource from the jaws of peril. The forbidden quality is selective, a gradient of risk. For the miner with a license and a practiced routine, it is a workplace of profound hardship. For the casual visitor who ignores the rules, it is a quick path to catastrophe. The line here is drawn by the environment itself, with the government acting not to create a mystery, but to manage a stark chemical reality. It asks us where we draw the boundary between courage and recklessness, and how a place of breathtaking, unearthly beauty can also be a perfectly designed, natural forbidden chamber. Decisions that ripple across the globe are made within a soundproofed, windowless room. Beneath the public grandeur of the White House lies a chamber designed for moments of profound gravity, the Situation Room. While tourists walk the halls above, this secure conference space is a fortress of executive deliberation, one of the most tightly controlled interiors on the planet. Its forbidden nature is not about ancient curses, but about the immediate, crushing weight of command. The legend here is written in the quiet tension of historical inflection points, the whispered conversations during the Cuban Missile Crisis, the real-time monitoring of a raid, or the urgent assessments during a natural disaster. This is where abstract intelligence becomes concrete choice, where the paths of history are narrowed to a few options discussed under soft, artificial light. The room's mythology is the story of modern statecraft itself, a narrative of burden, of information flowing in, and of orders flowing out, all shielded from the public eye. The protection of this space is a masterpiece of contemporary security. It is a box within a box, encased in layers of physical barriers, electronic shielding to prevent any signal from leaking in or out, and a human perimeter of the most rigorously vetted personnel. Access is a function of need to know, a privilege extended only to the president, a handful of senior advisors, and a skeleton crew of technical staff. Your presence is not determined by rank alone, but by the specific crisis unfolding on the screens that line the walls. This creates a forbidden zone defined by pure function. It is off-limits not to hide a treasure, but to protect a process, the sacred and fragile space where a nation's most difficult decisions must be made away from the distorting noise of politics and media. The Situation Room represents the ultimate convergence of narrative and necessity. The ancient force is the age-old need for a council chamber, a private space where leaders grapple with fate. The modern force is the technological and procedural apparatus that ensures that privacy is absolute in a transparent, interconnected world. It asks us to consider the paradox of power in a democracy. We elect leaders to see and know everything on our behalf, yet we accept that some of the most critical seeing and knowing must happen in a room we are never allowed to enter, trusting that the secrecy serves the safety it was built to ensure. The most isolated community on Earth lies 2,000 miles from the nearest continent. Tristan da Cunha emerges from the storm-swept South Atlantic as a cluster of volcanic peaks. Its main settlement, Edinburgh of the Seven Seas, a tiny cluster of houses clinging to the only flat land. The journey here is an epic undertaking, a week-long voyage by sea from South Africa on a handful of scheduled ships each year, entirely dependent on the mercy of the weather and the waves. This is not an island you simply visit on a whim. Its remoteness creates a natural fortress of ocean. In the early 19th century, a small group of settlers, just 15 individuals from Scotland, England, and 2 women from St. Helena, founded a community here. From that tiny founding population, through generations of profound isolation, a unique genetic and cultural story has unfolded. The island's several hundred residents today are almost all descended from those original families, creating a population of immense interest to geneticists and anthropologists. This isolation has crafted a living laboratory of human adaptation, a closed system where the effects of a limited gene pool can be studied in real time, offering insights into hereditary traits, population bottlenecks, and resilience. While the island is not officially forbidden, the sheer logistical wall of its geography enforces a de facto prohibition for almost everyone on the planet. You can apply for permission to visit, but the barrier is not a government decree. It is the vast, rolling emptiness of the ocean itself. Now, consider a future where this natural isolation is formally recognized and sealed by international agreement. Picture a hypothetical treaty signed by global scientific bodies and perhaps the islanders themselves that designates Tristan da Cunha not just as a remote outpost, but as a protected genetic preserve. The rationale would be one of profound stewardship. In a world of increasing homogenization and genetic mixing, this community represents a unique, irreplaceable chapter in the human story, a snapshot of a specific historical and biological trajectory. The treaty would not imprison the islanders, but would formally restrict new, permanent settlement to prevent the dilution of this unique lineage, while allowing the community to continue its chosen way of life. Medical and genetic research would be conducted under strict ethical guidelines with the full partnership and consent of the residents, treating them not as subjects but as custodians of a rare human heritage. This would create a forbidden zone of an entirely new kind. The protected artifact would not be a tomb or a document, but a living, breathing human population and the fragile social ecosystem they have built. The ancient force is the timeless power of the sea to separate and define. The modern force is the scientific value placed on that very separation, elevated to the level of international policy. It asks us a deeply ethical question. Can a human community become a preserved study? And what does it mean to draw a protective boundary not just around a place, but around the people within it, honoring their isolation as a form of global patrimony? This scenario forces us to confront the ultimate intimacy of a forbidden zone, where the line is drawn not to keep us from a secret, but to safeguard a singular and ongoing human story from the tides of a connected world. Among the ancient redwoods of Northern California, a different kind of boundary is drawn each July, not by law or lethal force, but by invitation and influence. The Bohemian Grove is a private campground owned by the Bohemian Club, and for 2 weeks every summer, it becomes the site of an intensely private encampment for its members, a roster that has historically included former presidents, titans of industry, and celebrated artists. This is not a government facility, yet its security is absolute. Its guest list a closely guarded secret, and its grounds utterly off-limits to the public. The forbidden zone here is socially constructed, a temporary territory of exclusivity that emerges from the collective desire of powerful individuals for privacy and camaraderie away from the public eye. The legends that swirl around this encampment are the stuff of modern folklore, a potent mix of observed oddities and feverish speculation. For decades, whispers and leaked accounts have described elaborate theatrical productions staged by the members themselves, casual lakeside conversations between world leaders, and most persistently, rumors of occult-themed rituals, including a ceremonial practice known as the cremation of care, where an effigy is burned before a giant stone owl. Whether these stories are exaggerated accounts of symbolic pageantry or something more is almost irrelevant to their power. They fulfill a deep-seated public need to narrativize what happens when the powerful gather in secret. The modern enforcers of this prohibition are not soldiers or police, but the club's own private security detail and, more fundamentally, the unspoken social contract among the members themselves. Discretion is the price of admission. This creates a fascinating dynamic where the forbidden quality is reinforced by both physical barriers and the immense social capital of those inside. A breach of trust here would mean exile from a network of unparalleled influence, a penalty far more effective than any fine. The Bohemian Grove encampment thus represents a pure form of socially enforced seclusion. It proves that a forbidden zone can be woven from threads of privilege, tradition, and mutual interest, requiring no official state decree. Its mystery endures precisely because it is voluntary and temporary, a ritual of withdrawal that, by its very existence, invites the outside world to imagine the conversations held under those centuries-old trees, transforming a private campground into a permanent fixture in the landscape of public speculation about where true power resides and what it discusses when it thinks no one listening. The decision of where to store a danger for 10,000 years is a story we are still writing. Yucca Mountain rises from the arid Nevada desert, a ridge of volcanic rock chosen by the United States government to solve a uniquely modern problem, the permanent isolation of spent nuclear fuel. This site is a forbidden zone of the future, a place designed to contain a legacy of our own making for a span of time that dwarfs recorded history. Its gates are sealed not by an ancient curse, but by a political stalemate, yet the mountain is already wrapped in powerful narratives. For the Western Shoshone Nation, this landscape is part of their ancestral homeland, recognized in the Treaty of Ruby Valley of 1863. The mountain and the surrounding land hold deep cultural and spiritual significance, a connection that stretches back long before the concept of radioactive waste existed. Their claim and their opposition form a profound contemporary story of sovereignty and respect for the earth. The modern fear is one of science and speculation, the long-term challenge of securing materials that will remain potentially hazardous for hundreds of centuries. How do you mark a site to warn civilizations 10 millennia from now? How do you ensure a geological tomb remains undisturbed by future generations who may have forgotten its purpose? These questions create a new kind of folklore, a legend of containment and consequence. The government's protection of the site, with its guarded perimeter and restricted access, is based on national policy for managing hazardous material. It is a placeholder for a decision not yet fully realized, a fortress built for a function it does not yet perform. This transforms Yucca Mountain into a unique archetype, a forbidden location whose primary power is potential. It represents a collision of timelines where ancient indigenous heritage meets a projected future of geological time, all locked in a present-day debate over safety, science, and cultural rights. The prohibition here is a promise and a warning, a line drawn to manage a responsibility we have created but have not yet agreed how to fulfill. It asks us what kind of story we wish to leave etched not in stone but in policy for the distant future to uncover. The final forbidden zone has no walls of stone or fences of wire. It exists as a hum of servers in a climate-controlled room, a nondescript building in an industrial park somewhere, its address a string of numbers known only to a handful of cleared personnel. This is the digital Forbidden City, a fortress whose treasure is pure information, and whose moat is built of encryption and legal statute. Its ancient legend is a rumor in the tech underground, whispers of a quantum decryption key, or a lost archive of early internet culture considered too volatile for public access. The danger here is not physical but existential to systems of trust and control. Protection is a layered reality. The physical site is secured against intrusion, but the true guardians are digital, relentless artificial intelligence monitoring for anomalous data packets, teams of cybersecurity experts operating in shifts across the globe, and legal frameworks with names like the Espionage Act that treat the theft of certain codes with the severity of an act of war. This conceptual location fundamentally challenges our idea of place. For millennia, a forbidden zone was a geography you could point to, a mountain, an island, a walled garden. Now, the most tightly guarded territories are ethereal, constellations of ones and zeros stored on spinning platters or flash memory. The firewall has become the new city wall, and a password can be a more absolute barrier than a minefield. This evolution completes the circle we have traced, the primal human instinct to forbid, to draw a boundary around the powerful and the dangerous, has simply migrated to a new frontier. We still fear what we do not understand, we still protect what we deem precious, and we still tell stories about what lies behind the locked door. Whether that door is made of oak or of Logan prompts, the effect on the human imagination is precisely the same. It ignites a fire of curiosity. It begs the question what is so valuable or so terrifying that it requires this perfect silence. The digital forbidden city reminds us that as our world becomes more virtual, our oldest stories simply put on new clothes, and the map of the forbidden will always be redrawn, not on parchment, but in the silent, electric pathways of the machines we build. The ultimate forbidden place would be a library of shadows. Picture a vault not for gold or weapons, but for stories themselves, a secure archive built into a mountainside in a nation synonymous with neutrality. This would be the final synthesis, a 35th location that exists to contain the essence of all the others. Under an unprecedented international treaty, participating nations could voluntarily deposit the complete dossiers of their forbidden sites, the geological surveys of Snake Island, the cultural impact assessments for Uluru, the declassified histories of Area 51, and the transcribed oral legends of the Gate of the Gods. Every satellite image, every soil sample analysis, every whispered local tale, and every official decree would be gathered in one neutral, hyper-secure repository. This archive would not seek to solve mysteries, but to preserve them in their full, contradictory complexity. Access would be the most exclusive privilege on Earth, granted only to a rotating council of historians, anthropologists, and folklorists sworn to lifelong confidentiality. Their task would not be to publish findings, but to simply bear witness, to understand the patterns in our collective need to forbid. The archive itself would become a meta-forbidden zone, a location whose sole purpose is to protect the narratives of other forbidden places. Its existence would be the highest acknowledgement of a truth we have traced across deserts and deep seas. The real power of these places does not reside solely in their toxic vapors or their sacred stones, but in the stories we wrap around them. The curse is as important as the crater. The government memo and the ancient prophecy are two sides of the same human document, each drawing a line for a different era. By creating a sanctuary for these narratives, we will be making a profound statement about the value of mystery in a world obsessed with exposure. We would be saying that some truths are too fragile for the public square, not because they are dangerous, but because their power depends on their context, on the delicate balance between knowing and not knowing. This hypothetical archive represents the end of the map. Beyond it, there is only the question that has guided us from the beginning. What do we, as a species, choose to place behind the final door? And what does that choice whisper back to us about our fears, our reverence, and the enduring, unquenchable light of our curiosity? The mercury-laden tomb of an emperor and the digital fortress of the 21st century are bound by the same human thread. Our journey across 35 forbidden locations uncovers a fundamental pattern etched into our psyche. We are a species that draws lines. We have always created spaces beyond reach, territories declared off limits by the stories we tell and the laws we write. These zones are protected by a dual lock, one ancient and one modern, and together they guard more than just physical places. They safeguard the very boundaries of our collective imagination. Each site acts as a mirror, reflecting a core human anxiety back at us. The toxic tomb reflects our fear of mortality and the lengths we go to conquer it. The sacred mountain reflects our yearning for the divine and our respect for the untouchable. The surveillance base reflects our unease with opaque power and the secrets of the state. The isolated island reflects our primal fear of the other and our own destructive potential. Even the Seed Vault, a place of hope, reflects our deep-seated anxiety about survival and our need to prepare for a fragile future. These are not just places on a map, they are psychological landmarks. While we may never walk the silent streets of Varosha or feel the cool stone of the Gate of the Gods, their very existence expands our world. They prove that in an age of satellites and search engines, genuine mystery still has a firm foothold. The unknown is not shrinking, it is simply changing its address, moving from haunted forests to encrypted servers, from cursed forts to climate-controlled archives. The enduring power of these places lies not in what they hide, but in the questions they force us to ask about ourselves. What do we collectively agree is too dangerous to know, too sacred to touch, or too powerful to share? Your answer to that question is perhaps the most personal map of all. Which of these forbidden locations captivates your imagination the most? Does the silent vigil of the unknown soldier resonate deepest, or does the living mystery of North Sentinel Island hold your curiosity? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you crave more journeys to the edges of the known, to the places where history and mystery collide, subscribe for deeper dives into the world's greatest enigmas. The map is never finished, and the next forbidden line is always waiting to be drawn.